You're listening to episode 712 of the Father Bills podcast. Welcome back. This week's episode is entitled Being Prudent with the Faith, given on the 25th Sunday in Ordinary Time, 2019. In the gospel we heard today was the dishonest steward who was truly serving his constituents. Or was he? Was he really being merciful? Was he acting in a godly way? Well, no, actually. He was being prudent, and this is the word I want you to think about through the whole homily, prudent. He was being prudent in setting himself up after he gets fired. But he used a creative way to do it. He used prudence to be creative, to get what he wanted. He wasn't serving God. He wasn't even serving his debtors. He wasn't serving his master. Nope. He was serving himself the whole time. That's the way of the world. And do you think that dishonest steward would stop being dishonest in his life? Because he's been dishonest in small things, he's going to be dishonest in big things. He can't be trusted. He will likely continue his ways, and even the shallow friends that he fraudulently made will disband. He will lose them because no one will put up for that for long. So then how are we to understand this story? Are we to do whatever we want and use any means to get what we want, even if it be evil? Is that prudent? No. In the first reading from Amos, it is made clear that the dishonest person will be punished. And if we keep reading in that text, which is not part of what we heard, read it yourself, it'll say he will go down into the netherworld and never rise again. Boom. There's eternal judgment upon the dishonest person. So Jesus is not encouraging us to be dishonest. So what is he trying to teach us? Well, we're being challenged to understand that we should be putting the same kind of energy in pursuing godliness as the dishonest steward did in worldliness. Put the same kind of energy in pursuing godliness as the dishonest steward did in worldliness. So how do we do that? Well, we're not to make the pursuit of money the prime goal in life, but rather the pursuit of relationships, particularly first God and then each other. That means we are to use our talents and treasures for the good of others, particularly the poor. Some people said, people make these incredible mansions. Look at this church, the stained glass, all the beauty, the statues, the Stations of the Cross. It is not evil to use your money to give glory to God. It is evil to try to dupe somebody with money. Wealth in itself is not the issue. It's the love of money, the obsession with mammon, which is money in this translation, which will push God out of our relationship, the most important one. For we cannot serve both God and mammon. In other words, money can be so powerful, we'll worship it. We'll do anything for it. Our popes have said time and time again that a capitalistic society that is geared solely on the gain of money is corrupted. That instead it needs to be done for the good of people. It is not a bad thing to gain money or to make a profit, but ultimately for the good of people. With whatever time and talent or treasure we have been given in this life, we are called to use it prudently for the glory of God and the salvation of souls, including our own. Sad it is that someone would be a millionaire and lose their soul. Sounds like a sort of a quote from the scriptures, huh? So we need to be prudent in regard to our future prospects and what we're doing with our time, talent, and treasure. You know, where our treasure is, there our heart is, we hear in the scripture. So are we storing up treasure for here or for heaven? And with whom should we be fostering these relationships that gives us this treasure? And how does the use of these gifts that we've been given matter 1,000 years from now? Because, you know, we can't take our worldly wealth with us. And I highly discourage anyone that puts in their will to their children $1 million. How many times have we seen sports figures get millions of dollars and go bankrupt because they have no clue how to deal with it? It ruins them. How many lottery winners have had the same demise where they get millions of dollars and it destroys them? You could say that people that come out of the woodwork are not their friends, and they get duped by all these people that are greedy. I think of other people who, though, have been, through their hard work, made billions of dollars. There's even a club of billionaires who their goal is to spend at least half of all of their money before they die. That is, in charity work. Bill Gates, and yes, I'm talking about Microsoft. Bill Gates, the money he gained as the founder and CEO, he's spending, and he may very well wipe out malaria in Africa because he can. Because with his money, he's being able to give people mosquito nets. And mosquitoes are one of the prominent ways that people get malaria. There's other ways. Wow, amazing that someone would then be able to take their wealth and try to use it for the good of others. So we need to reach out to those who really need the gospel, because the greatest poverty is no faith. We are rich because of our faith. And we need to share that wealth with those who are struggling in their faith. We need to work to transform this world into the image of God's kingdom so that others will come to know the truth. There are people that do not believe God exists. That's a very dangerous thing. God does exist, and we should share that truth. In being prudent, in making good decisions, we also need to seek out others who will challenge us and encourage us. Other people who will share our faith and can help build us up. Someone we can talk to when we're struggling or learn from. You see, our culture is increasingly becoming antagonistic to Christianity, and particularly the Catholic Christian tradition of faith. There's an ever-growing sense of intolerance or ambivalence and actual hostility towards Catholics. In Kenya, in the news this week, the government shut down all the schools, the Catholic schools, and their health institutions as a political power grab. You can read about it. Can you imagine? Oh, that's stunning. All too often, in our case, we don't even know how to respond to the challenges of our times. We need each other in order to be able to know how to respond. And more than respond, we need to be prudent stewards and know the craft of being able to make an argument, to drive the narrative instead of being a victim of someone else's narrative. And I'd like to recommend a book. Bishop Robert Barron has released a book called Arguing Religion. It's really thin, which is helpful. But he goes through some of the basic philosophical problems. Right now, there's a call for being tolerant. Sounds great. Like it's the greatest virtue that our culture can give. And being intolerant is like the greatest sin. The problem is intolerance or tolerance is not univocal. In other words, it's true everywhere in all places. We should be tolerant of people that are hurting or confused. But we shouldn't be tolerant of sin. We should say that something is evil when it's evil, as opposed to, well, that's okay for them when they're killing someone. We don't even do that normally. That's against natural law. So where tolerance has boundaries, and so does intolerance. And in fact, there's Pope Benedict spoke about this, called it a dictatorship of relativism. Before we might be able to make an argument and we'd still get along in charity, we'd make our discussions. But today, it's not tolerant, even though people will say it is. And they will say, no, you must agree with me or I'm going to penalize you or kill you. That's not tolerance. We can disagree. If you are truly tolerant, you have to be tolerant of my intolerance of a behavior or an idea that you have. We disagree, and we can still love each other. So if we live this life that we call as Christians, if we live the life by helping the poor and giving of ourselves, our verbal testimony will be all the more potent. That is, if we have a verbal testimony, if we can share our faith. But if we're not living the life, all this time and energy, money, etc., will be wasted because no one will believe what we say if we're not living it. In the times in which we live, we need to lift up the dignity of the human person, which reveals the image of God. It is being revealed to us. We don't get to make it up. You may be able to be a studied lawyer or a doctor. You may have the capacity for that, but not everybody does. There are limits to some of our abilities, and I don't create reality. Things are what they are, and it's normal to call them so. But I can say, oh, I don't identify with this or that. Well, you may not identify, but look at your biology. It says who you are. And anything else is delusional. So we need to challenge any notions that objectify the person as a mere tool, like I can exchange parts. I'm really not me. I'm just a body, and I can exchange my whole body and be somebody else. No. I am Bill, the son of George and Helene. And no thinking differently is going to change that reality. We need to be careful about how we allow pleasure to bias ourselves around things for our own selfish gain. Too often, we have not been prudent, but rather scared. In social situations, I get this. We too often shirk our responsibility when we need to stand up for our faith, when it's being demeaned or talked negatively, when someone ignorantly makes some statements like, oh, Catholic priests are abusers. That should not be tolerated. All abuse is evil, and that shouldn't be tolerated. We should say that. But it is completely, in the whole cloth, an error to say that all priests are abusers. Just like saying all teachers are abusers. That's baloney. But people will say these things in social situations. In conversations around all kinds of important issues, we need to participate by adding the wisdom of the church and her understanding about the dignity of life, peace, and justice. But how often we get shouted down. You can't be part of this conversation. You're religious. And see, the goal is secularism. So we're just replacing one version of reality for another. I thought we were tolerant. I thought we were supposed to allow all forms of discussion to be allowed, but not you Catholics. You're bigots. You don't love, you're intolerant. So how do we feel when this happens to us? Do we walk away scared? See, what we need to do is we need to be tooled up so that we can respond in love to these things. How can we do this? One simple way I want to offer. Get involved in your faith. And I'm not just talking about go to Mass and go home and that's it. We need to learn about our faith. Why do we teach what we do? Why has it been this way? How has God revealed himself to us? What is the Lord saying to us about things? Jesus has been quoted so many times about things that he never said. We actually have unfortunately, I think I was sharing with Debbie, or maybe with Sammy, we have a beautiful bookmark in our office. And it's all these things that are quoted by Mother Teresa. She never said those things. And we perpetrate a falsity. It's a wonderful thing. Like, people will get mad at you, serve them anyway. They'll be mean to you, love them anyway. It's a wonderful saying. But Mother Teresa never said this. How do I know that? Mother Teresa's website, the Sisters of Charity, have a list of things that Mother Teresa never said, and that's among them. I think I can trust the Sisters of Charity. So we need to put our convictions into practice. Participate in one of our Bible studies. Go on a retreat. Right now there's a lot of women that are on the women's Cursillo. They'll be done this evening. But there's also a men's Cursillo. There's also a men's and women's Acts retreat. Father Archie's been on that. I've been on that. There's charismatic men's and women's retreats. You can go on a silent retreat. I like those. How about you're married? Go on a marriage encounter. There's so many others that you can think of. Just look at our bulletin. There's constantly a retreat mentioned here or there. And it may not be in Southern Oregon. It could be up at Mount Angel. All the better. Get out of town. Retreat and get out of town. Do something that changes your scene so you can see differently. Study the issues in light of Catholic teaching. How can you do that? Well, online we have and we subscribe to Formed. Again, you go to the bulletin, you can see that. And go online and then learn about the issues from experts so that you can be, trained in what we really teach. We have a kiosk, and it's no longer in the vestibule today, it's out in the hall, but there's videos, CDs, there's books. You can learn about the faith that way. You can put a CD in your car and just be driving. You can turn on the radio and listen to EWTN or on your television. There's so many ways we can learn our faith. I wonder, how is it that sometimes we have a second grade understanding of our faith? Maybe it's because people get First Communion and they drop out and don't come back again until confirmation. And after confirmation, they drop out again. And maybe they have a fifth grade now understanding of the faith. That cannot withstand the current arguments. Imagine you're going to have heart surgery and you ask your cardiologist, how did you do in cardiology? I got a D, but I passed. You did not pass. You flunk. You're out. I changed my doctor. You're fired. But we're like that. We struggle. We need to know. First, have the relationship, and then be able to articulate what it is that Jesus has taught us. To be prudent in how to deal with the challenges of our lives. You can listen to podcasts. Go to iTunes or any podcast catcher you can get, and go online even and check videos. There's all kinds of videos. Ascension Press has wonderful things. Father Mike Schmitz has some awesome short videos to learn from. Or how about this? Not so passive now, but get involved in a ministry. One that will challenge you to get involved and help others. This weekend, we'll be hosting our parish ministry fair. You probably noticed there's a lot of action going on in the hall and outside. Food's being made. We have 40 ministries, which is 90% of all of our ministries, are represented this day in our parish center. And you can go into the hall, and I want you to do that. Get some food. Enjoy each other's company. See what ministries are out there. And put yourself forward. Learn. Get involved. Help out. For example, the folks that do the Altar Society, they do simple things of cleaning, but by doing so, they also learn about the linens and other things that are kind of details about the faith. It increases their faith. So we are being challenged to be prudent with the things of our faith, the things that are going to matter 1,000 years from now. To be honest stewards with the most important thing that we've been given and put it into practice so that we will be prudent stewards of our time, talent, and treasure that have been freely given to us and nurtured so that we in turn can give to others. Today, I want to encourage you then, this word prudence. Will you be prudent with the gifts that you've been given? Will you be prudent in using these important gifts for the salvation of souls? That is the reason the church exists, to proclaim the gospel and to help in the salvation of souls. consider yourself challenged, encouraged, and commissioned. When the priest ends, I guess that'll be me that does it, when we end this Mass, I will say, now go and proclaim the gospel of the Lord. Go live it. Change the world. Thank you again for listening to this episode of the Father Bill's podcast. If you have any questions or comments, just go to my website, fatherbill.org. That's FRBILL.org. And there you can find things about my social media accounts. You can email me from the main page and just look and see what's going on, my blog, other things like that. And until next time, may God bless you and have a great week. Bye-bye.